Hello and welcome. You're with India Post Live, India's first live conversation web television. This is a platform where all of you can participate in our conversations and in the issues we discuss through your audio and video comments, your posts and your tweets at #IndiaPostLive and @IndiaPostLive. So, last month on the 26th of May, Narendra Modi took oath as India's Prime Minister with a stupendous victory. And he came to power on promises of good governance and, of course, jump-starting the economy. But we are now looking at an inflation rate of, a 5-month high at 6.01%. Prices of onions are dearer, oil prices. Should we be worried? That is the question we are asking today. For a party that made price rise one of its main election issues, it is baptism by fire for the Narendra Modi government. Barely a month in office, and the wholesale price index is at a 5-month high of 6.1% for the month of May. Onion has taken the lead again as rising prices of vegetables is making consumers cry foul. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has been quick to announce measures to control prices and check hoarding. Now the onus is on the Modi government to control inflation with long-term measures. Otherwise, the same public that voted for him with such fervour a month ago may soon turn against him. So that is what we are discussing, inflation, and is it something that the government can really help? It's been less than a month. To talk about it, we have in my studio Dr. P. Pulla Rao, thank you so much, renowned economist and journalist. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. And Professor Nandini Datta, she teaches economics at Miranda House College of Delhi University. Professor Datta, thank you so much for joining the conversation on India Post Live. Also, we have on Google Hangout Vinayak Dutt. Vinayak is very eager to ask some questions on the state of the Indian economy. Vinayak, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Great having you. First, Dr. Rao. I can tell you that my mother is very worried, and I know a lot of other women, homemakers and general people who are really worried about rising prices. It's, of course, began with the onion again bringing tears to people's eyes. Do you think it's completely the government's responsibility and fault?
See, no, I will be ending up defending the government for no reason.
For no reason?
For no reason.
No, I'm sure you'll have great reasons.
I like a spokesperson, but I would say that for a month, it's not a long time, number one. Number two, the wholesale price index goes up, and Professor can correct me, because oil forms a large part of its weight. And this is a season just before agriculture season. So naturally, agriculture prices also, there's a shortage. It's the driest part of the year. And therefore, that price rise by itself, while it's worrisome, it is not something I would blame the government, or I would say it would indicate how the future would go. But what you would have noticed is in the last 10 days, instead of just wringing their hands and saying prices are going up, they started locating onions and potatoes, which have a long shelf life. They are not a daily item as a vegetable, they have a long shelf life. They started locating it, supplies have come in. So such items, they will control the prices. And as I see it also, once the rain set in a little bit, that sentiment changes. I firmly believe that you can't bring inflation, which has embedded into the system for the last 5 years. And I quote even the RBI governor, Professor Rajan, he says that it is no longer inflation caused by liquidity, maybe it's demand driven, that people will have more money, and that kind of optimistic view he takes. It takes time. Inflation by itself, to reduce it, to eliminate it, to control it, if this government is serious, it will take time. It will take the next budget, which is going to be announced shortly, and then it will take some time. So to straight away say that this government came to power on the brink of controlling prices would be a little unfair.
Yeah, since that was an election issue, that is something, and we obviously, it came to power, Professor Datta, on such a huge majority. So obviously, hawk eyes on the functioning of the government. But as Dr. Rao pointed out, Raghuraman Rajan, the RBI chief, has increased interest rates 3 times, and he has said that controlling inflation will be the priority over the next few months. Give us a perspective on the state of the economy.
Uh, what I feel is that, before we start into the blame game,
Yeah.
in the sense whether it is the new government who should have had a magic wand
Yeah.
and immediately brought everything into control, that's not the issue. However, this was the same government which was in the opposition just a few months back, and the kind of hoary cry they had about the same issues and the same things, and they were promising a whole world of this magic control and development platform, and I think much of our expectations are driven by that kind of a promise mechanism. However, let me just talk about inflation in its kind of economic sense.
Please,
that
yeah.
what does it mean? It doesn't just mean problematic for the homemaker or the woman in the house who's, as a role model is supposed to run the house.
Right.
It makes everything problematic
Of course.
if it is not controlled. The fact of the matter, I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea that it is demand driven, that people are being better off. That is the kind of sentiment we were hearing in the UPA regime, that everyone is better off, the poverty lines, I mean, many people have crossed the poverty line and they are now a part of the middle class or so on.
Increasing buying power.
Buying power, which is a myth. You have to understand that, over the past decade or so, more than a decade, the neoliberal agenda has practiced certain things which is precisely in the name of liberty and democracy, has widened the inequality gap, has actually got the welfare state to withdraw, which means that withdrawal of many of the plans and programs that the government used to initiate and the government used to put in place, those are being systematically withdrawn.
Okay.
And now it almost seems that the corporate world wants to tell us that, if inflation needs to be controlled, that somewhere down corporate profits have to be controlled. Instead of that, what we are being told every day is that subsidies have to be withdrawn. So it almost seems that it is the poor, the working class, the so-called middle class or the lower middle class is one who is responsible for the inflation, whose buying power is increasing, and they are responsible. That is not true at all. In fact, the inequality gaps are increasing very much.
Okay, let me bring in Bappa Mukherjee. Bappa Mukherjee joins us from Baltimore in United States. Bappa, thank you for joining the conversation. Very quickly, your comments on this, this high inflation number that we've seen in the past 5 months.
Yeah, I mean, my point of view is that in India, I find that the economists tend to be divided into opposing ideological camps, and they tend to use every crisis to push their point of view. Like you have people on the panel talking about the neoliberal agenda, versus there'll be another person coming in and saying that you need to open markets more. Well, that misses the basic point that the core reason why India's economy is stagnating is poor governance. And unless those who are in power in India get that right, all these technocratic discussions about interest rates and deficits is meaningless because on the ground, as long as it's extremely difficult to open businesses in India, as long as the law and order situation is very poor, and as long as the airports and the infrastructure is bad, these are all like building blocks of a good economy. And of course, the C word, which economists, I don't know why in India find it very hard to talk about, that is corruption. Uh, because my view is that the reason they find it very hard to talk about is that the leftist economists feel that if they talk about corruption, then that will be used as a cudgel to reduce welfare schemes like Narega, while the right wing economists feel that if they talk about corruption, then crony capitalism will come into focus. So we are in a very peculiar situation where the 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 real reason why Indian economy is suffering is not being addressed. That is governance, and we keep on talking around it. But we have these very wonderful technocratic discussions, which ultimately lead to nothing
So
because we are
you're
not
saying,
addressing.
okay, you're saying that the basic issue is good governance, and yes, you have
Where do you find the, I have seen this, how a very nice expert, where do you find the ideal governance? Is it in USA or is it in Russia or is it in Iceland? All of them have melted down. Iceland has melted down. Russia, not crony, there's something even worse. And America is held up, in my opinion, by tourists coming to USA and by people like me sending my children to study there.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, how your country, I mean, where you're staying sustains. Where is the ideal governance? Where will you get it? Can you just bring it and land here? I mean, I'm not asking.
But
this
Dr. Rao is
silly-
also saying that 1 month is too little a time. We need to give this government more
Where is the
time. That's what
governance?
Bappa, that's what
I
he's
mean,
saying.
really mean,
Can
you
I-
have raised a
can I
very nice
respond?
issue. I respect that.
Sure.
But how do you
So
change?
can I respond to that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so for example, in the US, there are specific public policy failures in specific sectors, like in financial sector, due to the Financial Modernization Act of 1999, the Glass-Steagall distinction between between financial institutions and banking institutions was removed. So you had like runaway speculation. That was a regulatory failure. So we have to learn. India has to learn lessons from that. That should not be taken to mean that good regulatory systems can never be put in place because there was a financial crisis of 2008. That's a very pessimistic view to take. That just because there was a financial crisis and which originated in the
Okay.
U.S., you have to condemn the 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 the,
Okay,
the low
Bappa.
corruption regimes of
Okay,
other countries.
yeah, your point, you've made your point. Let me bring in Vinayak Dutt now, and Vinayak, I think, has a question for our panelists. Vinayak, if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. My question is for Pula Rao sir. Like Modi came to the power, he gave a slogan, बहुत हुई महंगाई की मार अब की बार मोदी सरकार. See, the way Modi government is there, they are functioning like an extension of UPA. They haven't changed a single policy to deal with the inflation. Point number one. I'm not saying that they should have taken the drastic steps, but at least they could have shown some vision. They could have shown some intent to control that. Be it the prices of diesel or the petroleum, be it the rail hike, they are blaming everything like UP never had the guts. But you came to power to control inflation. Na? UPA has been swept out of power just because they never had the guts. If you are implementing the same policies, what they were having, what is the difference between you and the UPA?
Okay,
You
Vinayak,
cannot shift the blame to UPA for the inflation.
What is the difference between what NDA has done and the UPA?
The NDA and UPA, you see, like as Professor also said, 1 month is a short time. But I agree with you. They are going on this old idea that you simply cut down the gas subsidy, you cut down the diesel subsidy, and all will be well with the economy. I totally disagree because it is not that much of a subsidy also. And if I may go a little further, which nobody discusses, who is giving this bill? 3 of the most inefficient public sector companies in India, the 3 oil companies. The 3 oil companies, their productivity, their profitability, their method of working, nobody questions. They simply say, our cost of production of a cylinder is 1,000 rupees. Nobody questions that. I agree with you. The Modi government, if it had anything to differentiate itself, should have gone another route and found out where the fiscal deficit is coming from, can we control it, and leave this alone. They are not doing anything.
Can we talk of, again, another issue where the government might not have, Professor Datta, let me put this question to you, the government might not be responsible for, and that is deficit monsoon. The monsoon has been deficit by as much as 40% according to the IMD. So do you think that is a worrying factor, that worry that we will see over the next few months?
Definitely, that is a worrying factor, and that is also a failure of governance over years. I'm not blaming one government or the other. I mean, even NDA was in power 10 years back. We have not paid adequate attention to the fact of this reliance on monsoons.
Yes.
Too heavy reliance. We should have invested much more heavily into agriculture. Systematically, public investment in agriculture has been reduced by each successive government. It has got nothing to do. It is the belief that there will be private investment in agriculture which never came forward, because the kind of returns and the kind of outcomes that the corporates would want in order to bring in that private investment, our country is not prepared at this moment. The fact of the matter is that you require more and more public investment in agriculture, which has been systematically withdrawn. Why are we today, in a day and age of technology, in a day and age of absolutely very good, sophisticated technology available to help farmers to ensure output at levels that are sustainable, why are we talking about one deficit monsoon? Almost as if that is the only reason. I mean, there are exogenous reasons why inflation happens, but there are equally endogenous reasons. I mean, putting too much money, a credit economy that was supposed to be a highly speculative economy, which was a part of a global culture. It is not a part of, whether this government felt that the market was a good place, whether that footloose capital was a good thing to come to India or not. The issue is that governments have systematically relied on speculation rather than entrenching investment in building productive capacities.
But now the government is trying to, it has taken some steps to, control,
Let me substantiate or support what Professor Datta has said. If they had formed UPA government, National Advisory Council, they had 15 members. Not a single farm member was there.
Yeah, yes, you admit.
Not a single agriculture-oriented person was there. On the contrary, there were people who were always talking against agriculture, as if agriculture is an outdated, antiquated profession, economy, and you should move people to the cities, and then everything is solved.
Which, if I'm right, is 14% of the economic output is agriculture.
No, 14, no, more
It
than
is
that.
more than
that.
that. About 26%.
26%. Okay.
I think it will imbalance. If all the farmers come to Delhi, it will not be life here. So therefore,
Absolutely.
the last government has consciously done some pseudo or false social engineering where they thought some things will change without knowing the impact of it. And that's what we have precisely. We lost 10 years. They spent, and I'm going to step on some toes here, 300,000 crores on Narega, and there's not even a well to show for it. There is not a wall in a village. Had they spent even 1/3 of that on irrigation, for example, and removing siltage, small things, we would not have this.
So you're saying that basically it's come as a legacy to this government.
It's a legacy.
Okay, and let's talk of what this government is doing. In fact, Mr. Modi said a few days back that, a mother should know that if she doesn't give bitter medicine to the child today, the child will suffer long-term illness tomorrow. What more bitter medicines can we expect from this government, Dr. Rao?
I would think that he's going on the wrong track, literally. You have raised rail prices. Fair enough, but immediately you should have said service is going to improve. What he says is this is for the past sickness that I am treating. There is no future solution. That's where he is giving a wrong message. I would have been happy if he says I've raised the prices by 100%, but for this you're going to get 100% more trains. They're going to be better stations. They're going to be better this. They're going to modernize this, at least this sector. There's nothing of that. He says this is for the past. Therefore, the bitter medicine which he's planning about also is antiquated economics. We are not. Why don't you think about the budget? Why don't you think about other things? All he's talking about is Land Acquisition Act, which farmers are benefiting from. I'm going to change that. I don't think he's being well advised.
Bappa Mukherjee, I think, has a point to make to that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as what the government could have done, that would have inspired some confidence. At least what I was looking for, and I knew that this Modi government couldn't deliver on this, is again a slew of reforms in the in governance that would have included making the Jan Lokpal institution much more robust, increasing the size of the judiciary, um, basically all the institutions that are essential for effective rule of law in a country. I mean, the economists don't want to talk about this, but unless India gets it right on that front, economic stagnation is not going to be overcome.
You know, the whole
So,
issue, Bappa, if I may just add, if I may also ask you a question, the stock market was looking very robust at the time of the swearing in, but now even the stock markets have become damp. Investments were supposed to be on a all-time high. There was supposed to be a drastic increase in investments. So, how do you think these factors play out in this present context, the state of the inflation?
no, of course. I mean, like when you have a weak monsoon, that's a temporary cause of heightened inflation. But what I think what the global investors are looking at when they look at India is that, I mean, the weak rule of law. I mean, you can't escape that. I mean, basically, you have to increase the size of the judiciary. You have to ensure that crimes are punished in a routine manner. In economic offenses are punished very severely. Uh, but these cannot happen because unfortunately the vested interests that have financed the Modi campaign will be hurt with those kind of measures. So
Okay.
and so that's my view, that
Okay.
the reason why governance reforms cannot happen is because people who finance Indian elections will be sent to jail if those reforms are instituted.
Okay, okay, Dr. Rao, let me again ask you another question. Do you think it's too little, or what the government is doing? This whole idea of cracking down on hoarders, the whole idea of increasing the minimum export price to $300 per ton when it comes to onions, and also restricting imports so as to reduce the prices in the local market. Do you think these steps that the government is actually trying to take, do you think it's too little?
I think it's too little. I think it's only 700 hours since he has taken over as Prime Minister. 700 hours.
Okay.
And also, all they have to do is, how do you dehoard stuff? You bring more stuff. He should immediately, I don't understand the government's hesitancy in saying we'll get some supplies from Pakistan on a temporary basis. Then you'll find all the hoarders, at least that's what by economics I was taught, they'll rush and sell it. They're not, as I still worry who his advisors are, because they're not still faceless. At least the UPA government used to say so-and-so is the advisor, and we knew which books they have read. I don't know who his advisors are, but those steps are very little. Supply is the best way to control prices. And saying that hoarders are keeping it, hoarders will keep it. You can't go and find where they are hiding it. But if you bring supplies, it's out.
Professor Datta, let me bring in another point over here, the issue of center-state cooperation in terms of the state of the economy. JP Morgan analysis has said that of the top 50 stalled investment projects, 80% have been stalled because of the state red tapeism and not because of the center. Do you think that has a very crucial role to play in terms of jump-starting the economy, the fact that, the election promise, the big election promise that we heard here?
What does red tapeism mean? That it itself has to be understood. If red tapeism is the label that you attach to a state who's trying for the right reasons or the wrong reasons to protect certain interests of the catchment, that is their vote bank, whatever the reason may be. If that is red tapeism, or the removal of red tapeism is synonymous with the idea that the states all suddenly, whatever their ideological differences are, ally to what the centre's interest is. Now, this is not going to happen. You can cooperate. You can cooperate to bring in policies together. But in terms of protecting state interests, in a federal structure is bound to happen. I think in the first place, if you start treating this as the main obstacle or a red tapeism, you're going to land yourself into the most difficult areas of inaction, because then the center will always say that we have all the grand ideas, but it is because of the states and their implementational deficit that things are not taking place. That's not the way things are.
Okay.
Two other things I just briefly would want to touch up. You know, when we talk about inflation within quotes, it almost seems that every day a rise in the cylinder by 5 rupees, or onions becoming from say 26 rupees to 30 rupees is a huge matter. The point is actually for the poor, every basic amenity and its non-availability, or the reason why it is not, they are not being able to access it, creates that kind of pressure. That pressure is not necessarily an inflationary pressure. Particularly, I would say that a Modi government who believed, who wanted to come on a development plank and who quickly wanted to get themselves into a development, I should think that they shouldn't bother about little inflation right now.
Oh.
If they are putting in the investment.
So that's the bitter medicine that you're talking about?
If they are putting, provided they put in the development plan. My problem with the Modi government is that you cannot have the rhetoric of both development and inflation control at the same time.
Okay.
As far as Bappa is concerned and governance issues he is constantly raising, there is no quarrel with him regarding that there is a problem and a need for governance. And why would governance? Because everybody is in the same plate. It's almost the same. That you don't want to hurt certain kind of interests. I'm completely in agreement. But it is not that economists are not looking into these matters. How much money gets, into the drain just because of corruption is well known.
Absolutely.
However, we have to understand that, again, these are very common whipping boys. These are also what allows them to keep saying there is misgovernance. There is a lot of corruption. We have been left, UP has left us in the lurch. We have got nothing to do. Array, you knew all these things. Still you said that you'd put in.
Point taken,
Please
Professor
come
Datta. Okay, we have to wrap up the conversation. Bappa, very quickly, your last comments from you. Very quickly, please.
Well, I can post a paper I was reading yesterday on this topic, and it says that.
Please share it with us on indiapostlive.com, Bappa. You must do that.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
And it found that there is a very strong correlation between inflation and corruption, and in fact the 10 lowest inflation countries currently are also rated very low on the corruption index by the host of international corruption agencies. These are not. These are not whipping boys. But the point I was making was that there should have been, at least over the last 30 days, some indication that the Modi government wants to move in the direction of improving government.
All right. Yeah, that is a point that everybody is making. That
total silence on that point, and corruption.
So more confidence building measures required, Bappa. From the government.
Because this is a crisis. There should have been perhaps a special session of parliament called. Something should have been done.
All right.
To give this one, but nothing is happening.
All right.
Technocratic solutions won't work. That's my final point.
Thank you, Bappa. Thank you so much for your point, Vinayak. Not a very negative state of affairs as both our experts and Bappa Mukherjee from US. Do you have any hope, or do you see price rise continuing over the next few months?
I see that price rise or inflation is closely related to the government and the administration. If the Modi government manages to provide some better administration than their UPA counterparts, I guess they can control the inflation. It is still controllable.
Okay, so you're saying that again, like Bappa said, good governance is the only way one can control. Dr. Rao?
Good good governance is a very idealistic world, and one can hope it happens. But there are practical tools that the government has, aside from good governance. And if he accesses those tools, I firmly believe that the coming budget should show whether he can control it.
Okay.
I also believe that the fiscal deficit can be cut, and if the fiscal deficit is cut, our rupee value will go up, automatically the price of imports will come down marginally. That will also be anti-inflation.
Do you think Iraq has a role to play in this Iraq crisis?
It's a temporary phenomenon.
Temporary.
I think the oil market will adjust. There's a glut in the world. It takes 20 days for tankers to turn around. It is a temporary thing which speculators naturally gain.
All right, all right. Ma'am, last comments.
I just feel that, whatever are your promises, you have to address the issue promises for whom. Who is to be included in these promises? If you cannot use Aam Aadmi, you cannot use the common man just like that as a part of your rhetoric. You have to include his interests. If you include his interests, put in a lot of developmental projects for him, put in a lot of welfare budget for him, I'm telling you, this is not going to be a problem. Narega can be a favorite whipping boy, but okay, if Narega is a corrupting thing, take away Narega, but please replace it with something.
Asset building projects, I suppose. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Create national assets.
Create national assets. Right. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rao, any quick
No, I
sense?
entirely
You
agree.
agree.
We should
Okay,
have
great.
assets, not
All right.
wasteful expenditure. Assets, at least
All right.
50% of expenditure should be assets, so at least we see something is
So
there.
basically, perhaps 1 month is too short a time to be whipping the government yet. But yes, the government does need to come out clean on what its policies are going to be, economic policies are going to be. As Dr. Rao said, perhaps it will be prudent to wait for the budget to know which way the economy is going to go. I would like to thank both Vinayak and Bappa Mukherjee for joining us in the conversation. Thank you so much. And Bappa, we will wait your post on IndiaPostLive.com. I would like to thank Professor Datta and of course Dr. Pulla Rao. Thank you so much for being on the conversation with your insightful comments. The conversation continues on IndiaPostLive.com through your posts, audio and video comments, and of course your tweets. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.